She was a hardworking single mother with a smile that could light up a room.
She had the perfect smile, perfect teeth, these big bright eyes.
She always could make you laugh.
She was petite, but she was larger than life.
He was someone who could match her energy.
She wanted somebody to be an equal, to be a partner.
She had made like a Facebook post, oh, the love of my life.
He was along for the ride.
But in the middle of a spring night, her life ends in unimaginable horror.
The violence, the trauma, that is serious anger.
She was tortured. That was hate, a demon.
Just like, how evil could you be to do that?
Was it a case of unrequited love?
She had just broken up with him, and now she's dead.
This subject is scorn.
Or did a pattern of violence escalate to murder?
He's popping up at her job, stalking her.
He said that he was going to her up.
I think she knew that she had to get away.
The fact that my sister was screaming for her life and nobody heard her, it's haunting.
May 15th, 2016. It's a quiet night in Concord, California, a suburban community 30 miles east of San Francisco.
But it's just one of those bedroom communities that grew and grew and grew.
Concord, California is a wonderful city. It has great schools. It has great neighborhoods. It's just a really nice place to raise a family.
But at 2:30 a.m., the quiet tranquility is broken by the sounds of sirens.
I was woken up in the middle of the night from my sergeant, and he asked that I respond for a possible homicide at Duck Pond at Newhall Park. A couple of guys were out in the middle of the night going to fish, and they came across the victim.
This way, detectives.
Thank you, officer.
The scene was wrapped with crime tape. There was a couple officers out there kind of working scene security. And as I approached the pond, I could see the victim. She had a large laceration to her head that was obvious that she had suffered major trauma.
She had multiple fractures all over her face. She was beaten countless times, and she was also strangled. The attack was beyond brutal.
The victim had literally her fist shoved inside her mouth. And that's something I've never come across. It's right up there with some of the worst violence I've seen through the decades.
But who is this woman that suffered such a tragic fate?
Here you go, detective. Thank you.
The patrol cars have a portable fingerprint reader, and it's just like it sounds. You can take it out, put it up against somebody's thumb, then a match will show up.
When investigators scan the woman's prints, they get a hit.
The victim is 25-year-old Poinsettia Parnes.
Born and raised in the suburbs of San Francisco, Poinsettia always stood out because of her small size.
Her friends called her Shorty. She was very, very small, very petite. She had the perfect smile, perfect teeth, these big bright eyes.
What Poinsettia lacked in stature, she more than made up for in personality.
She was petite, but she was very mighty. And she just had a personality that was larger than life.
She always could make you laugh, and a lot of friends were attracted to her kindness and her funniness.
She just really, truly loved other people.
Never one to shy away from the spotlight, Poinsettia discovered a passion for the performing arts early in life.
She was very good at acting. She was in the Wiz at Pleasant Hill Middle School. And everybody came up to me afterwards asking me, where did she learn how to act? Where did she learn how to sing?
And as she grew into a young woman, she was determined to turn her passion into a career path.
I said, well, Poinsettia, what do you want to do? And she said, I want to do children's theater. And I said, well, all you have to do is start.
But at the age of 17, Poinsettia's plans for her future were put on hold when she and her high school sweetheart, Tyler Combs, got some surprising news.
She found out she was pregnant.
When she's pregnant, like she'll stop everything she's doing. She'll eat healthy. She'll sit there and read to the baby. That's the type of mother she is.
And when her daughter Angelique was born, Poinsettia couldn't have been happier.
She was a good mother. Very, very energetic, very engaging.
It was always fun when I was with her. My mom was a happy person. She was goofy.
But as much as they loved their daughter, Poinsettia and Tyler struggled to adjust to their new role as parents.
It was difficult because she had postpartum depression for a while.
It was too expensive. How soon can two teenagers from the Bay Area get their stuff together? This is Silicon Valley. If you're not making six figures or more, how long is it really going to take for you to get it together?
Poinsettia and Tyler did not end up staying together. They broke up.
In the wake of the breakup, Poinsettia's family stepped in to help with baby Angelique.
Our great aunt would come get her every weekend. And then she was like, well, let me just keep her. Let me keep her until you get yourself together.
She wanted to be a good mom. And I would take her up to see her daughter. We'd go to the park.
And I remember being at the park with her and we were running around, having fun. And she was just super joyful.
She was looking forward to doing whatever she had to do to get her back.
Even if that meant working around the clock to save up money for an apartment.
She wanted to better her life and be able to provide for her young daughter.
At that time, she worked in a beauty supply store, and then she also worked for security at Safeway, which everybody thought was hilarious because you got this tiny person chasing after criminals.
It was pretty dangerous, but she was just fearless.
By her early 20s, Poinsettia was also fearless in love.
She was dating, getting to know people.
She wanted somebody to be an equal, to be a partner, a supportive person, that you support them and they support you.
How you doing, baby?
Hi.
So when Poinsettia began building a relationship with 26-year-old Eric Lamar Nelson, he seemed like just the supportive partner she'd been searching for.
He wasn't scared off by the fact that she had a child.
She thought he was good looking. He was tall.
I'm really excited to go out tonight.
Yeah?
Work has been really crazy.
The first time I was made aware of Eric was around Christmas. She had made a Facebook post, oh, the love of my life, and where would I be without you?
She never had a long, steady relationship for a long, long time. I think that's what she wanted.
And she finally found someone who was also along for the ride.
But now, Poinsettia has been found murdered at a park in Concord, California.
The brutality of it definitely stands out.
The amount of blows and damage was definitely shocking. She had lacerations all over her face. She had a broken nose. She had bruising from her chin down to her clavicle.
Her hand, was found in her mouth.
When her hand was removed, it was learned that her tongue was actually split in half. There is no way that you can look at the injuries that Poinsettia sustained and not think that this was personal.
Investigators believe Poinsettia's killer was trying to send a message.
I think the splitting of her tongue and shoving her hand in her mouth was symbolic.
To me, it seems that somebody might have been upset about something she was going to say.
That definitely is sending a message that I am silencing you.
But who was trying to silence Poinsettia, and why?
It's definitely something that would only be done with a lot of anger behind it.
25-year-old Poinsettia Parks was working hard to create a safe haven for her young daughter, with her boyfriend Eric Nelson by her side.
She held 2 jobs. She was hardworking. She had goals.
She had the intent to get her daughter back and just starting a new.
But when Concord police discover Poinsettia brutalized and left for dead at a local fishing pond, the hunt is on for her killer.
It's obvious that there was some anger involved. Shoving someone's hand inside their mouth, it's definitely something that would only be done with a lot of anger behind it.
As investigators scour the area for clues, they discover that the fight for Poinsettia's life began in a nearby parking lot.
They found Poinsettia's wig kind of up near the parking lot area. They found a lot of different markings with blood.
It's plausible that some type of argument occurred in or around their car, that it became violent, and at some point, either the victim ran or the victim fought.
There was a struggle from the parking lot all the way down to the pond. There was a guardrail that separated the parking lot from the pond, and on that guardrail was a palm print, and it was blood.
We took photos of it, and we ended up taking the entire guardrail, preserved it.
As the sun comes up over Northern California, detectives head to the home of Poinsettia's mother, Andrella Bohanna.
Given these type of notifications, they're difficult. We knocked on the door, identified ourselves, and she could tell something was wrong immediately.
I look at him, and then I'm like, is it my daughter? And after they told me, I dropped to the floor and I just screamed and cried.
Andrella tells the detectives that Poinsettia's death is even more devastating because of something her daughter told her a few weeks earlier.
Poinsettia, she was pregnant.
She was expecting another child. She was 6 weeks pregnant.
She was trying to keep a secret. She was trying to hint around, but she can't hold water. She just had to blurt it out.
Do you know who the father of the child was?
Yes, his name is Eric Nelson.
Andrella tells detectives that Poinsettia and Eric had dated for about 9 months. But recently, the young couple split up.
With the added pressure of a pregnancy, their relationship just couldn't cut it.
Do you think he'd be involved in with what happened last night?
Eric? I don't think so.
I just didn't think of Eric that he would want to actually hurt her. I mean, I know they had arguments and stuff, but I didn't think he would hurt her.
Since her breakup with Eric, Andrella says her daughter had actually started dating someone new, a man named Gerald Cook.
What can you tell us about him?
Not much, but I know that he worked with Poinsettia. That's how they met.
Gerald also worked at the Safeway, where Poinsettia worked security.
The relationship started off as friends, and then you spend a lot of time with someone, you start developing like romantic feelings for them.
Detectives are eager to speak with Gerald Cook. But first, they have another important question for Poinsettia's mother.
Is your daughter's car here? We did locate it from the crime scene.
No.
Her car is a green 4-door vehicle. As far as her mom knew, Poinsettia doesn't share the car with anyone. So the car should have been wherever she is. It's very possible that the suspect is with her vehicle.
Police issued an APB advising law enforcement agencies in the area to keep an eye out for Poinsettia's car.
Thank you for your time, ma'am. We're sorry again for your loss.
The tragic news quickly spreads to the rest of Poinsettia's family.
I remember being with my aunt and she got a phone call and she stepped outside, and then when she came back, she was crying and upset, and I kept asking her what happened. She didn't want to tell me, and then finally she told me, like, your mother passed away. I wasn't really sure what to think or how to feel in the moment. It definitely was a weird feeling.
I didn't want to believe what I was hearing. I fell to the ground and had an anxiety attack. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was being suffocated, like somebody was jumping up and down on my chest like it was a trampoline. So it just was very overwhelming.
Back at the station, detectives bring Poinsettia's new boyfriend, Gerald Cook, in for questioning.
Gerald was concerned. He wanted information. He wanted to know what happened.
She was found dead earlier this morning.
What?
He genuinely appeared to be upset learning what had happened to Poinsettia.
And you two were in a dating relationship. Is that correct?
Well, we were. Until yesterday.
Gerald said that Poinsettia had just broken up with him hours before she was found dead.
At this point, you don't know how into this relationship Gerald was, right? And then it's cut off out of nowhere. And how would he react to that?
She had just broken up with him, and now she's dead. It's not looking good.
May 2016, Concord, California. Detectives investigating the brutal murder of pregnant mother Poinsettia Parks are speaking with a man she'd recently been dating before she was killed, a coworker named Gerald Cook.
You look at acquaintances, you look at friends, somebody caused these injuries. As far as who and why, you don't know yet.
And this was a very personal attack on her.
Gerald has just revealed that he and Poinsettia broke up the day before her body was discovered.
I think he was aware that it looked suspicious. She had just broken up with him, and now she's dead.
How long were you two together?
Since April.
They were dating about a month. She'd spent a lot of time with him, even spending time with his family.
Were there any issues between you and Poinsettia?
No. Never.
He appeared to have genuine feelings for her.
He has nothing but positive things to say about my sister. Like, he really liked her.
He was hoping that they could become more serious.
But Gerald says Poinsettia wasn't on the same page.
When she called to break up with me, it was around 6:15 p.m. And that was on the 15th. Really? Are you sure?
It felt like just out of the blue, right?
She said she had made some type of plans to go down to Las Vegas.
She was going to move in with her sister.
I'm sorry. I just can't do the long distance thing right now.
She said, I need a new start. She didn't really specify what she wanted to do. She just needed to get out of the area. She needed a new environment. And so we agreed that she would come to Vegas and live with me and just start over.
When Poinsettia, broke it off with Gerald, he was obviously upset.
That's what you really want?
I'm sorry.
Bye.
You have to consider the possibility that this subject is scorn. He finds out possibly that this developing relationship is going to come to an end, and he could be upset about that. He could act out. He could get violent.
So where were you last night, Gerald?
I was at home, just playing video games, trying to take my mind off things.
Gerald insists he would never do anything to hurt Poinsettia, but he says there's someone else who might.
Have you guys talked to her ex-boyfriend, Eric?
No. Why?
Listen, that guy's a straight-up psycho.
According to Gerald, Eric Nelson has been acting strange ever since Poinsettia broke up with him.
Gerald informed detectives that her ex was showing up at her job. He had been keeping tabs on her.
He would come into the store and follow her around. Eric even broke a window in her car.
But is Gerald telling the truth, or is he just trying to lead investigators off his trail?
You have a conversation with Gerald, and you take the information you gather and you consider it, but he's not ruled out yet.
You have to determine, what do I have that can prove or disprove his story?
Detectives begin reaching out to Poinsettia's friends and coworkers to verify Gerald's account of Eric Nelson's alarming behavior.
There were things that had happened in the past few weeks or past couple months that employees had witnessed related to Eric's badgering and hassling of Poinsettia.
When a friend of Poinsettia's named Justin Marsh comes in, he's able to provide detectives with shocking new details about the couple's tumultuous relationship.
Thank you for coming in, Justin.
Of course.
That particular friend, he took effort into trying to look after Poinsettia,
which meant protecting her from Eric.
This guy's dangerous.
This friend had noticed the escalation of his behaviors, and it wasn't just little things being said here and there. These were like big gestures, making threats, stalking her.
He had a lot of little bits that gave him justification for thinking that Eric was related to this.
Especially because of something that happened a couple weeks ago.
Apparently, before Poinsettia worked up the courage to leave Eric, she made a shocking discovery amongst his belongings.
He was using meth.
That was the final straw for her. Poinsettia didn't want her children around that.
She was ready to cut Eric out of her life for good.
So she sent Justin to return Eric's possessions.
He had brought property to Eric from Poinsettia just so she didn't have to see him. And when he dropped off this property, he was upset.
Well, Poinsettia, she's not here. It's just me.
Little.
He said that he was going to fuck her up.
Detectives investigating the murder of 25-year-old Poinsettia Parks have a new prime suspect, her ex-boyfriend and father of her unborn child, Eric Nelson.
He was stalking Poinsettia. He was harassing Poinsettia.
And Poinsettia's friend Justin says the situation had recently progressed into a ticking time bomb.
After they were broken up, she sent me to give him some of his stuff back.
She didn't want any contact with him.
Well, Poinsettia, she's not here. It's just me.
What?
That little what?
He said, when I dropped off our property, Eric was upset, and he said that he was going to fuck her up.
Normal, rational people are going to move on from that point. But in this case, his reaction, no. This guy wants a confrontation, is what he wants.
I ain't playing, man.
What's that supposed to mean? Huh?
Justin says not long after that, Eric paid Poinsettia a visit at work.
I just want you to talk to you.
Leave me alone and get the hell out of here, please, Eric!
He became violent with Poinsettia.
Eric ripped her wig off, which is the ultimate form of like humiliation.
Now what?
He did that in front of people with the intention of embarrassing her, with the intention of demeaning her.
To detectives, this incident is especially telling.
They found Poinsettia's wig at the crime scene, ripped from her head, just like the incident Justin is describing. It suggests a pattern of abuse.
He just wouldn't leave her alone.
Justin says as hard as Poinsettia tried to rid herself of Eric, he refused to back down.
What are you doing
I
here?
love you, I love you, I love you. I cannot live without you, baby. Please, I cannot live without you, baby.
There was an incident where apparently Eric had ingested pine sol and was chasing Poinsettia around saying he's going to kill himself and she's going to witness it.
And this may have been his last-ditch effort to control her. Okay, you're going to leave. I'm going to kill myself so that you can live with this forever.
But Poinsettia held her ground.
I need to talk to you. Get out! I need to talk to you!
Poinsettia realized that the only way to finally rid herself of her ex was to leave town altogether.
Jesus.
We spoke 2 days prior to her murder, she called me and she asked if she could come move to Las Vegas. And she said, I want to just start over.
I think Poinsettia knew that she was in danger. And I think she knew that she had to get away.
Tragically, Poinsettia never got the chance to make her fresh start.
48 hours later, she was dead.
And detectives now believe they've identified the man responsible for taking her life.
Eric was the primary suspect in this investigation.
But tracking down Eric Nelson is complicated.
You try and find contact information for him, but he didn't have a recent address and he didn't have his own cell phone. He would borrow phones, so it was difficult.
Investigators discovered that this isn't Eric's first run-in with the law. Not by a long shot.
Mr. Nelson had a pretty significant criminal history.
He had crimes of violence, he had property crimes, he had narcotic-related crimes.
While they wait for leads on Eric's whereabouts, investigators continue building their case against him. And when detectives receive a call from the coroner's office, they have another breadcrumb to follow.
During the autopsy, they look at the victim's clothes, and inside one of her front pockets, she had a receipt from the grocery store within a couple miles of the duck pond.
And so Concord Police Department pulled surveillance from that grocery store.
Just after the purchase was made inside the store, which was a notebook, she can be seen exiting the store.
And she's not alone.
Boom. That's him.
It's clear that she's exiting the store with Eric.
Investigators now have footage placing Eric with Poinsettia just 4 hours before her body was discovered.
That's a huge piece of evidence, without question.
In the weeks before she was murdered, Poinsettia Parks was desperately trying to escape an abusive relationship with Eric Lamar Nelson.
Get out!
She definitely feared him, and she knew that she needed to physically and emotionally separate herself from him.
Now, homicide detectives have discovered surveillance video that places Poinsettia with Eric just a few hours before she was found dead in a local park.
Boom. That's him.
The fact that you see her exit the store with Eric, those are first real solid digital evidence to show that he was physically with her really close to the time that she was located.
He was the last person to be seen with her.
But after days of searching for their suspect, Eric is still nowhere to be found.
Once police exhausted all their avenues to locate Eric, it became apparent he wasn't just a hard man to find. He was actually on the run.
There wasn't really anybody that you could go to and really develop good information on his whereabouts.
He had friends and family here and there that were willing to help him evade the law.
But detectives do get one useful tip from Eric's parole officer.
A lot of times, Eric would stay with his friend, Wayne Robbins. He could possibly be hiding out there.
We eventually contacted Wayne, who came down to speak to us.
In a police interview room, Wayne is reluctant to provide the investigators with much information.
Information had to be kind of pulled out of him. He gave a lot of yes and no, vague answers.
However, Wayne does admit that Eric showed up at his house around 1 a.m. on the night Poinsettia was killed.
What type of car was he driving?
A green sedan.
Eric showed up at his confidant's home in Poinsettia's car without Poinsettia.
Hey, man. You okay? I've been trying to reach you all night.
Yeah, I'm fine.
He said that Eric his term was heartbroken about the separation from Poinsettia.
But Eric wasn't just heartbroken, he was also angry.
Mr. Nelson had a pretty significant criminal history. And at the time of this murder, Mr. Nelson was on parole for robbery.
Poinsettia had told Eric that she was going to contact his parole officer as like a last effort just to get him to stay away.
If Mr. Nelson didn't leave her alone, she was going to go to his parole agent and tell the agent about all the things that Mr. Nelson had been doing, including his harassment.
For detectives, this information calls to mind an important detail from the crime scene.
She was found with her tongue slit and her hand shoved in her mouth.
This was the first time and the only time we learned of any detail that could explain why Poinsettia had her hand shoved in her mouth.
It was symbolic of his efforts to silence her, to prevent her from speaking to his parole officer.
Where's Eric now?
No, I haven't seen him since that night.
Wayne claims that when he woke up the next morning, Eric was gone, and so was Poinsettia's car.
But even with Eric still on the lam, police finally locate Poinsettia's missing vehicle on May 25th.
Poinsettia's car is found in Stockton, which I think is about 30 to 40 miles away.
It was located basically in a kind of an abandoned state. It had the driver's side window shattered.
They looked over the car and found that the car had intentionally been lit on fire.
The vehicle did not become completely engulfed, but there was a lot of black soot in the car. The passenger seat was destroyed during the fire.
Despite the extensive damage, one piece of evidence survived the blaze.
Look at this.
There was what appeared to be the rings from a notebook. That has relevance because Poinsettia had purchased a notebook at the grocery store that she was seen on video with Eric the night before she was located at the park.
It's even more evidence tying Eric to Poinsettia on the night she was killed. But where is he now?
They searched the car extensively. They canvassed the area, but no one knew where Eric was.
However, that changes when a call comes in to Concord police from out of state.
A little more than a week after Poinsettia was located, we received a call from Reno Police Department.
Detective Bardella speaking.
Eric has stolen another vehicle.
He drove off the side of the road.
I believe it was a coward move.
For more than a week, California police have been searching for Eric Nelson, the prime suspect in the murder of Poinsettia Park.
He was on the run. It's like we were right behind him each time.
But now, Concord detectives learn that after setting Poinsettia's car on fire and abandoning it in Stockton, Eric had stolen another vehicle.
He drove off the side of the road, off the side of the freeway. He was injured, but he was able to walk away from the collision.
He then hitched a ride from two Good Samaritans that didn't know who he was to a local church. And then at the church, he told the pastor that he was wanted for murder in California.
Fortunately, the pastor encouraged Eric to turn himself in.
Reno police at that time informed us that they had Eric in custody. I think that Eric, in the end, a lack of family, a lack of friends, a lack of locations to go to, he probably was tired of running.
Thanks. We'll be there soon.
When Concord detectives arrive in Reno, Eric agrees to speak with them.
He waived his Miranda rights and agreed to speak to me, but he was very limited in information that he would share.
Eric says the car crash was another attempt to take his own life.
I just don't want to be here anymore.
He, in his own words, tried to commit suicide.
I believe he didn't want to get shot down. I believe it was a coward move.
Did you kill Poinsettia?
No.
He didn't admit to being the primary suspect in this homicide. He didn't admit to being with Poinsettia at the time of the incident or prior.
Then how do you explain this video from last Sunday?
I brought up the footage of Poinsettia and Eric in the grocery store, and he dismissed it, saying something similar to, "Oh, you've got video."
By the end of the interview, investigators are ready to charge him with first-degree murder.
I would have liked to have a confession, of course, but that would have been more the cherry. That wasn't the cake.
In this case, the evidence just speaks for itself.
And when Eric's trial begins in March 2021, prosecutors let the evidence do all the talking.
Mr. Nelson knew that Poinsettia was moving on, and he did not want her to move on.
He was losing his power and control. That's what it's about.
There was nothing that made me think that he was going to be content with their relationship coming to an end.
No one knew exactly how, but Eric must have talked Poinsettia into letting him accompany her to the store on the afternoon of May 15th.
I would think that they were spending time together, probably because Eric had forced himself upon her.
It's hard to completely cut the father of your child out of your life, which is why Poinsettia was planning to move to Las Vegas in the next couple of days.
I think that she knew that something was about to happen, and she was trying to buy herself some time.
They go to the park, they have a conversation. Something happens, something that makes Eric become super angry.
I need you to understand that this is over for good.
Mr. Nelson knew that either Poinsettia was going to be moving to Las Vegas with his child, or if he didn't leave her alone, she was going to snitch on him and tell his parole officer about the things that he had been doing.
He was a violent criminal. He had 2 strikes already.
In California, there's what's called the 3 strikes law. If Eric was convicted of another crime, he was running the risk of a life sentence.
Oh, you're going to regret this.
Prosecutors believe that's what ultimately convinced Eric to silence Poinsettia forever.
He did what Eric does, get physical. And I can only imagine the brutality of it. It wasn't over in a second.
It's not easy to kill somebody, beating him to death. It takes time.
Seeing the injuries that were inflicted upon Poinsettia, I had never seen anything quite like that. It was such a vicious and sustained attack.
Poinsettia was 6 weeks pregnant. And it's like, wow, not only did you kill her, you also killed this baby that was inside of her. Just like, how evil could you be to do that?
As the prosecution rests their case, they offer one final piece of evidence they say proves Eric's guilt beyond any doubt.
When law enforcement processed the crime scene, they located a bloody handprint near the edge of the pond.
That palm print matched Mr. Nelson's palm print.
It doesn't take long for the jury to reach their verdict.
When the jury found Mr. Nelson guilty, I felt this overwhelming sense of just thank you for serving justice. And I knew that Poinsettia's mom and her sister were right behind me in the courtroom.
I was relieved. It doesn't give you closure, though. None of it gives you closure.
The judge sentences Eric to 85 years to life in prison.
He don't need to be on the street. Justice needed to be served.
Hopefully Eric never gets out and never is in the position to do something like that to anybody else.
But even with Eric locked up for decades to come, Poinsettia's loved ones can never forget the horrors he inflicted on their family.
My sister died a brutal death. I'm talking about painful. The fact that my sister was screaming for her life and nobody heard her, like nobody was there. It's haunting. It's haunting to be a big sister.
She got taken away from me from when I was 7, and I haven't got to experience the mother-daughter relationship, and there's much more to come with that, which I won't get to experience.
He took a precious gift from God, a precious gift. Now she's up in heaven with the angels.
The wooded area surrounding Timothy's apartment was conducted. After a neighbor reported hearing gunshots on the night of the disappearance, the search only located the remains of a deceased animal, bringing temporary relief but no answers. As Tanisha's family and volunteers organized search parties, investigators began receiving bizarre reports from residents of Timothy's apartment complex. Neighbors recalled that on the Friday following Tanisha's disappearance, Timothy had spent the entire weekend continuously operating 2 large barbecue grills on his patio. The smoke had become so intense and uncontrollable that residents had contacted the fire department. When firefighters arrived, Timothy claimed he was preparing meat for a church picnic of nearly 200 people. One firefighter noted seeing what he believed was uncooked meat floating in a bathtub filled with water inside the apartment. Even more suspicious was the report of a neighbor who observed Timothy scrubbing his patio with a massive quantity of bleach, creating a scent so powerful that it caused physical irritation to her eyes. The accumulation of these odd behaviors forced investigators to reconsider Timothy as their primary suspect. Desperate for answers, Tanisha's sister contacted community activist Quan Nell X, who agreed to assist. Quan Nell discovered that Timothy's family had also reached out to him, claiming Timothy was being unfairly targeted by the police. Quan Nell arranged a private meeting with Timothy at his apartment. During the meeting, Timothy appeared extremely stressed and paranoid, requesting that they speak in the bathroom because he believed his apartment was wired with listening devices. Quan Nell, possessing a deep understanding of human psychology, looked Timothy in the eye and pressed him for the truth. Under the weight of his own conscience and Quannell's direct questioning, Timothy broke down. He admitted that when Tanisha refused to discuss her relationship with Mark, he had flown into a violent rage, attacking and strangling her to death as she tried to walk out the door. He claimed he had placed her body in a dumpster at the rear of the complex. Quan Nell immediately contacted investigator Sidney Miller, along with Timothy. They drove to the indicated dumpster, but to their horror, the bin was completely empty. It had been cleared by sanitation services just days prior. Investigators realized that recovering Tanisha's body from the massive regional landfill would require a monumental effort costing upwards of $500,000. Ultimately, Tanisha's family made the painful request to halt the search, choosing not to exhaust public resources on a search that offered no guarantee of success. Timothy immediately invoked his right to counsel and refused to speak further with police. To secure a conviction without a body, the prosecution required physical evidence. Crime scene investigators returned to Timothy's apartment. with advanced forensic tools conducting a meticulous, microscopic search. The effort yielded a grim breakthrough. In the kitchen garbage disposal, investigators recovered tiny bone fragments and a piece of tooth enamel. Forensic testing confirmed the enamel belonged to Tanisha, additionally charred. Bone fragments were found near the patio where Timothy had operated the grills. On September 29, 2008, the trial of Timothy Shepard commenced. The prosecution argued that Timothy had killed Tanisha in a fit of possessive rage because he could not accept her moving on with her life. To establish premeditation, they called Timothy's cousin, Nicholas Shepard, to the stand. Nicholas delivered shocking testimony, revealing that Timothy had previously threatened that if Tanisha ever left him, he would cut her remains into pieces and boil them. Quannell X also testified, recounting Timothy's detailed confession. During the sentencing phase, Timothy took the stand in his own defense, claiming that Tanisha had initiated the violence by attacking him with a knife and that he had acted in self-defense, blacking out during the struggle. However, his attempts to minimize his guilt collapsed during cross-examination. When asked to clarify what he had done with her remains, Timothy bluntly corrected the prosecutor, stating that he had placed her remains inside his smoker. The jury rejected Timothy's claims of self-defense. He was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 99 years in prison, the maximum penalty allowed. It was a just conclusion for a perpetrator who had exhibited an unfathomable level of cruelty, ensuring he would spend the remainder of his life behind bars. The final case brings us to the state of North Carolina, where a respected spiritual leader utilized his public platform to conceal a deeply predatory nature and a fatal, obsessive infatuation. On the cold winter morning of January 30th, 2008 morning, commuters along Interstate 540 in Raleigh, North Carolina, noticed a figure lying in the grass beside the highway. First responders discovered the body of a young woman who had been brutally stabbed 40 times. The violence of the attack was profound. Her carotid artery and jugular vein had been severed, and her vocal cords had been cut, ensuring she could not cry out for help. Her jewelry remained intact, suggesting robbery was not the motive. The sheer volume of the wounds indicated an assailant acting out of extreme personal rage. Shortly after the scene was secured, Darren Curtis drove past the backup on his way to work. Just a half-mile past the crime scene, he spotted a white sedan parked on the shoulder of the road. Recognizing the vehicle as belonging to his wife, Darren panicked and returned to the police barricade. Investigators confirmed his worst fears. The deceased woman was his 21-year-old wife, Latrice Curtis, a promising business student at North Carolina Central University. Darren was immediately taken to the police station for questioning. Investigators examined his hands and arms for defensive wounds, finding none. He consented to a search of his home and vehicle, which yielded no evidence of involvement. Darren's timeline was consistent. He had gone to sleep at 11, 30 the night before, assuming his wife was staying with her family after. Studying late, finding no motive or physical evidence linking him to the crime. Police released him. An autopsy of Latrice's body revealed a vital piece of biological evidence. A condom was recovered from her vaginal canal. Crucially, there were no signs of physical trauma or struggle in her genital area, suggesting she had engaged in consensual sexual intercourse shortly before her death. Investigators subpoenaed Latrice's mobile phone records and discovered a flurry of calls exchanged around midnight with a young man named Stephen Randolph. Stephen was a prominent basketball player at North Carolina Central University, with hopes of securing a career in the National Basketball Association. 2 days after the murder, Stephen arrived at the sheriff's office to provide a statement, accompanied by his roommate and landlord, a local pastor named Robert Reeves. In the interrogation room, Stephen initially claimed he and Latrice were merely classmates. However, when confronted with the autopsy findings, he admitted they had been engaged in a passionate, secret affair. He explained that on the night of January 29th, Latrice had visited his basement apartment. During their encounter, the condom had become trapped. Unable to retrieve it, Latrice left his home around 10 in the evening. Stephen claimed he then drove to the apartment of his girlfriend, Velma Newton, where he stayed until approximately 1 in the morning. Velma Newton confirmed Stephen's alibi, but added a critical piece of information. She and Stephen had been receiving a series of anonymous, threatening phone calls demanding they end their relationship. Furthermore, someone had recently slashed all 4 tires on Stephen's car. The investigation took a dramatic turn when State Trooper Isaac Cooper contacted detectives. Cooper reported that at approximately 1:30 in the morning on the night of the murder, he had observed a vehicle parked near the location where Latrice's body was later found. Running the vehicle's license plate, Cooper discovered it was registered to Pastor Robert Reeves. Pastor Reeves, a charismatic 43-year-old minister known as the Bishop, was a highly respected figure in the local religious community. When detectives questioned him regarding his vehicle's presence at the scene, Reeves claimed he had been attending a church service before returning home, suggesting that Stephen must have borrowed his car without permission. However, investigators noted deep scratches on Reeves' hands and arms. The pastor claimed he had scraped his arm while helping Stephen move a desk. When investigators interviewed Stephen, he denied that any such move or injury had occurred. He then made a startling disclosure. Pastor Reeves had developed a bizarre, unwanted sexual obsession with him, even offering to waive his rent in exchange for sexual favors, an offer Stephen had rejected. A search of the pastor's phone records revealed that the anonymous threatening calls to Stephen and Velma had been placed from Reeves' own mobile device. The final piece of evidence came from the state crime lab. DNA recovered from the steering wheel of Latrice's abandoned car matched Pastor Robert Reeves. The presence of Stephen's DNA under Latrice's fingernails was explained as a natural transfer from their consensual sexual encounter earlier that evening. The psychological profile of Robert Reeves reveals a deeply manipulative individual who utilized his religious standing to project an aura of moral authority while harboring a history of sexual predation, driven by an intense jealousy of any woman who occupied Stephen's attention. Reeves had stalked Latrice on the night of the murder. He followed her onto the highway, forced or persuaded her to pull over, and carried out a savage attack, believing that by removing her, he could eliminate a rival for Stephen's affection. On October 7, 2009, a Wake County jury found Robert Reeves guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, exposing the profound hypocrisy of a trusted community figure and delivering justice for Latrice Curtis. In examining these three narratives, we are reminded of the critical importance of vigilance, empathy, and early intervention in cases where affection begins to transform into obsession. In each instance, the careful, scientific dedication of law enforcement and forensic specialists succeeded in piercing the veil of lies constructed by the perpetrators. While the lives of Wayne Irby, Tanisha Stewart, and Latrice Curtis were tragically cut short, their memories are honored through the pursuit and achievement of justice, proving that even in the face of profound human malice, the truth will ultimately prevail. The human mind is a complex landscape where the brightest of emotions can sometimes cast the darkest of shadows. In the study of criminal psychology, we often observe that the most tragic events do not begin in the minds of hardened career criminals, but rather within the delicate, volatile spaces of personal relationships, when love, which ought to be a source of support and mutual growth, becomes entangled with the destructive forces of possessiveness, jealousy, and control. The results can be catastrophic. To understand these tragedies is not merely to catalog the evidence left behind on a cold afternoon or in a darkened room. It requires us to gently and respectfully examine the vulnerabilities of those involved, to look closely at the behavioral patterns that preceded the violence, and to honor the dedicated efforts of the investigators who labor to bring truth to light. By exploring three distinct, deeply troubling cases, we can begin to analyze the psychological mechanisms that drive individuals to commit unspeakable acts, and, in doing so, perhaps offer some measure of educational value and awareness to the broader community. The first case study brings us to the quiet plains of North Texas in the winter of 2004. To the outside observer, the relationship between Denise Miller and Wayne Irby seemed to possess all the elements of a traditional small-town romance. Denise was a 36-year-old mother of two who had recently moved from her home in Kansas City, Missouri, to the growing suburb of Little Elm, Texas. She was seeking a fresh start after a difficult divorce, a clean slate upon which to build a stable and prosperous life for her teenage daughter, Whitney, and her young son, Walter. By all accounts, she was succeeding. She had secured a good position with a local beverage distributor, managed her finances with prudence, and built a beautiful house that stood as a testament to her independence and resilience. Her path crossed with Wayne Irby in 2003 under circumstances that seemed almost cinematic. Wayne was a 37-year-old patrol officer with the Little Elm Police Department, a 6-year veteran of the force who was known for his dedication, his approachable demeanor, and his deep passion for his work. Colleagues often remarked that he was an officer who truly cared for his community, a man who literally and figuratively bled blue. On a routine patrol, he noticed that Denise's garage door had been left open, leaving her home vulnerable to local thefts. He knocked on her door to advise her to close it, leaving his card with a polite offer of assistance should she ever need it. This brief, protective gesture sparked an immediate connection. It was not long before Wayne returned, not in his official capacity, but to ask Denise out on a date. The chemistry was instantaneous and mutual. Wayne confided in his close friends on the force that he believed he had finally found the woman with whom he wanted to settle down. For Denise, Wayne represented security, strength, and a partner who could share in her success. He was quickly embraced by her children, who grew to view him as a warm and stabilizing father figure. For a time, they appeared to be the picture of a happy, blended family. Yet beneath this harmonious surface, psychological friction was beginning to develop. Trust is the foundation of any enduring partnership, and when that foundation is compromised, the entire structure becomes unstable. Denise began to harbor deep suspicions regarding Wayne's fidelity. Because of his friendly, outgoing nature and his high visibility in the community, Wayne was frequently in contact with other residents, including female acquaintances on his beat. 2. A mind primed by past betrayals, these routine interactions were viewed through a lens of profound suspicion. Denise began to confront Wayne with allegations of infidelity, which he vehemently denied. According to friends, Wayne expressed frustration, feeling smothered by her constant doubts and the frequent, anxious phone calls that began to interrupt his shifts. In December of 2003, the underlying tension erupted into a physical altercation at Wayne's rental home. Denise had arrived unannounced, spotting another woman's purse through a window near the door. When Wayne opened the door, a heated argument ensued that quickly turned physical. An incident report from that evening detailed injuries to both parties, but Wayne bore the brunt of the physical damage, displaying significant scratches on his face and a dark bruise around his eye. Denise initially filed a complaint of domestic violence against Wayne, but withdrew it the following day after a witness corroborated Wayne's account that he had merely been defending himself and attempting to de-escalate her sudden, aggressive reaction. This incident serves as a significant behavioral marker for psychological analysts. It reveals a pattern of high emotional volatility, an inability to manage rejection, and a willingness to use physical aggression to assert control when a perceived threat to the relationship emerged. Despite these serious warning signs, the couple attempted to reconcile.
In the
spring of 2004, they decided to purchase a home together, hoping that a shared investment and a unified household would soothe their lingering trust issues. However, cohabitation did not resolve their deep-seated insecurities. By late autumn, the emotional strain proved too heavy, and Wayne made the difficult decision to move out, renting a separate house across town. The separation was brief. In November of 2004, Denise unexpectedly lost her employment. Motivated by concern for her and her children, Wayne offered to return and help support the household, attempting once more to salvage their relationship. But the underlying pathology of possession had not been addressed. The final act of this tragedy began to unfold on the morning of December 10th, 2004. At 6 in the morning, the officers of the Little Elm Police Department gathered for their daily briefing. One chair remained empty. Wayne Irby, a man who was notoriously punctual and dedicated, was a no-show. This immediate departure from his routine raised red flags among his colleagues, particularly his partner, Jerry Walker, and his close friend, Cynthia Medrano. When phone calls went unanswered, the police chief dispatched officers to conduct a welfare check at the residence Wayne shared with Denise. The officers found the house quiet. No vehicles parked in the driveway, and no one answered the door. Later that afternoon, investigators spoke with Denise's children, who revealed that they had not seen their mother or Wayne in nearly 24 hours. More concerning was a phone call Denise's daughter had received around midnight, in which her mother spoke in a highly unusual, overly sentimental tone, stating she was running errands and expressing her love before telling the children to prepare themselves for school the next morning. Recognizing that both an officer and his partner were missing, Detective Walker and Officer James decided to check the rental home that Wayne had recently vacated. Utilizing a key obtained from the landlord, they entered the quiet residence. On the kitchen counter, they found Wayne's personal fanny pack and his cellular telephone, items he rarely, if ever, left behind. Stepping further into the hallway, Officer Wynn stopped, gasping, and warned his partner to stay back. Lying on the floor was Wayne Irby. He had been killed by a single gunshot wound, delivered to the very center of the back of his head. The nature of the wound strongly suggested he had been shot from behind, completely unaware of the threat. The search for Denise now took on a desperate urgency. Was she another victim of a hidden assailant, or was she the perpetrator of this terrible deed? A subsequent search of the home she shared with Wayne revealed critical pieces of evidence. In the master bedroom, investigators discovered a handwritten note from Denise expressing a profound weariness and a desire to escape her pain, a clear indication of suicidal ideation. Furthermore, Wayne's duty belt hung on the wall, but his holster was empty. On the kitchen island of Wayne's rental home, crime scene investigators located another handwritten note from Denise. The message was brief, but devastating, apologizing for taking both of their lives and asking that their mothers be contacted. For the investigators, this was a chilling, written confession. It suggested a murder-suicide plot, but Denise was still missing. At 4 a.m. on December 11th, 2004, a hotel manager in the nearby city of Gainesville, Texas, received a distressed, slurred call from a guest. Attempting to investigate, the manager found the door to the room deadbolt from the inside. A maintenance worker was summoned to force the door open. Inside the dark, disarrayed room, they discovered Denise Miller lying on the floor in a fetal position, bleeding from a gunshot wound just above her eye. Beside her lay a .25 caliber handgun and a bottle of alcohol, along with over-the-counter sleeping pills. Wayne's .40 caliber service weapon was also found in the room. It had jammed because Denise had attempted to load a cartridge into the chamber backward, forcing her to utilize the smaller .25 caliber handgun instead. Emergency medical technicians rushed her to a nearby trauma center where she survived her life-threatening injuries, but was left with severe, permanent physical and cognitive impairments. In her hotel room, investigators found a third, much longer note. Amid expressions of remorse, there was a single line claiming that the shooting of Wayne had been an accident and that she had panicked and fled. When Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy interviewed Denise at her bedside, she appeared disoriented and claimed to have no memory of the events. She denied that Wayne was dead and seemed genuinely shocked when told of her own suicide attempt. Psychologically, this presenting amnesia can be understood in two ways. The severe trauma of a bullet passing through the frontal lobe of the brain can certainly cause genuine, profound memory deficits, retrograde amnesia, and a loss of cognitive and motor functions. Alternatively, the human mind, when confronted with an act of such horrific consequence, may construct a defensive barrier of denial and suppression to protect itself from the crushing weight of guilt. To the police force and Wayne's grieving family, however, the claims of an accidental shooting were hard to accept. The physical evidence spoke clearly. Forensic testing on the .25 caliber handgun revealed that it required approximately 5 pounds of pressure to pull the trigger, completely undermining the theory of an accidental discharge. The bullet recovered from Wayne's head matched the weapon perfectly. A gun that belonged to Denise's stepfather and which she had brought with her to the encounter. After 18 months of intensive physical rehabilitation, Denise was declared competent to stand trial. In July of 2006, she entered the courtroom in a wheelchair, a frail, partially paralyzed, and visually impaired figure. Her defense team argued that she had already paid an immense physical and psychological price and maintained that the shooting was a tragic accident born of a volatile argument. The prosecution, however, urged the jury to look past her physical frailty and focus on her actions. She had armed herself beforehand, confronted a man who was attempting to end the relationship, shot him in the back of the head, left him to die without calling for medical assistance, written 3 separate notes, and fled. After less than an hour of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of guilty. Spared the death penalty, she was sentenced to 62 years in prison.
4.
The families of both the victim and the perpetrator, there was no sense of
victory.
A dedicated officer's life had been cut short, and 2 children had lost their mother to a self-inflicted prison of concrete and regret.
It stands
as a sober reminder of the tragic destination of uncontrolled jealousy and the illusion that one can possess another human being. The second case study shifts our focus to Houston, Texas, in the spring of 2007. It is a narrative that highlights the vulnerability of youth and the horrific lengths to which a controlling personality will go when their sense of dominance is challenged. Tanisha Stewart was a 19-year-old college freshman attending Texas A&M University on a hard-earned academic
scholarship.
Growing up in one of Houston's most challenging neighborhoods and losing her father at a young age, Tanisha had refused to let her circumstances define her. She was a brilliant, hardworking, and ambitious young woman with an infectious smile and a promising future. In May of 2005, while working at a local pizza restaurant, 17-year-old Tanisha met Timothy Shepard, who was 25 years old. Despite the 8-year age gap, Timothy pursued her persistently until she agreed to go out with him. Over the next 2 years, their relationship grew increasingly serious. Timothy made a concerted effort to win over Tanisha's mother and siblings, assisting with household repairs and presenting himself as a helpful, caring partner. However, as Tanisha transitioned from high school to university life, the dynamics of their relationship began to shift. The physical and social distance of college life allowed Tanisha to grow more independent, to meet new friends, and to expand her horizons. This healthy, normal development of a young adult was viewed by Timothy not as an achievement to be celebrated, but as a direct threat to his control. Timothy's behavior became increasingly possessive and domineering. He would call her incessantly, send threatening text messages, and on several occasions, he even drove 2 hours to the university campus to search for her when she did not answer his calls immediately. Tanisha's sister, Gayla Taylor, later recalled a deeply troubling incident in which Timothy had physically assaulted Tanisha, choking her during an argument when she expressed a desire to leave. These behaviors are classic indicators of an abusive relationship where the perpetrator uses intimidation, isolation, and physical violence to maintain a sense of ownership over their partner. In March of 2007, Tanisha returned home to Houston for her spring
break.
While she spent some time with Timothy, she was also exploring her newfound independence, planning to attend a concert with her friends and keeping in touch with a classmate from university, Mark Marks. Tanisha and Mark had recently begun dating, and Tanisha had confided in her friends that she was finally ready to end her relationship with Timothy, though she wished to do so gently to avoid hurting his feelings. On the morning of Thursday, March 15th, 2007, Timothy picked Tanisha up from a friend's house. While in his vehicle, Tanisha received a phone call from Mark Marks. This communication sparked an immediate, intense confrontation. When they arrived at Timothy's apartment, he demanded to know why. Another man was calling her so early in the morning. Tanisha, weary of the drama and the constant monitoring, refused to engage, telling him she did not want to discuss it and simply wanted to enjoy her break. According to Timothy's initial statement to the police, Tanisha walked out of his apartment later that morning, and he never saw her again. When Tanisha failed to show up for her scheduled concert and did not return her mother's phone calls, her family's concern turned to panic. Tanisha was not a person to vanish without communication. Her family filed a missing persons report on March 19th. Investigators initially questioned Timothy for nearly 20 hours. He maintained his story with a calm, cooperative demeanor and even gave written consent for search teams to examine his apartment. Finding no obvious signs of a struggle or foul play, detectives turned their attention to Mark Marks. However, Mark cooperated fully and possessed a verified, solid alibi. He had been at a gathering with friends on South Padre Island at the time of her disappearance. With their primary leads seemingly exhausted, investigators were faced with the terrifying possibility of a random abduction. Yet, as the community rallied to search the wooded areas near Timothy's apartment complex, neighbors began to report highly unusual behavior. They noted that for several days following Tanisha's disappearance, Timothy had been operating 2 large barbecue grills and a smoker on his patio almost continuously. The smoke had become so dense and uncontrolled at one point that neighbors called the fire department, fearing a structural fire. When firefighters arrived, Timothy claimed he was preparing a massive quantity of meat for an upcoming church picnic of nearly 200 people. The firefighters, seeing what appeared to be raw meat soaking in a bathtub, accepted his explanation and helped him control the flames. Additionally, a neighbor reported seeing Timothy scrubbing his patio with a massive amount of bleach, the fumes of which were so strong they caused her eyes to burn. As suspicion began to focus back on Timothy, Tanisha's family contacted Quannell X, a prominent community activist known for his ability to facilitate communication between law enforcement and young men in the community. Quannell, who had also been contacted by Timothy's family to protect him from potential police misconduct, agreed to meet Timothy privately in his apartment. The 2 men met in the bathroom of the apartment, where Timothy was visibly trembling and highly stressed. Quannell, utilizing his experience and sharp perception, looked Timothy in the eye and asked him directly if he had harmed Tanisha. Timothy broke down. He confessed that when Tanisha tried to leave the apartment, he had flown into a jealous rage, attacked her, and strangled her to
death.
He claimed he had then placed her body in a commercial dumpster behind the apartment complex. Quannell immediately contacted investigator Sidney Miller. Armed with this confession, police and a crime scene unit rushed to the dumpster, accompanied by Tanisha's devastated family. However, when they arrived, they discovered the dumpster was entirely empty. It had been routinely collected and its contents transported to a massive regional landfill. A search of the landfill was deemed logistically impossible and financially prohibitive, costing upwards of $500,000. Showing immense dignity and selflessness, Tanisha's family requested that the county not expend those public resources, accepting that her physical remains might never be fully recovered. Following his arrest, Timothy invoked his right to counsel and refused to speak further with investigators, leaving the prosecution with a challenging task: proving a homicide had occurred without a body. To build a solid case, forensic investigators scoured Timothy's apartment with microscopic precision. Their meticulous efforts yielded critical physical evidence. In the kitchen, they discovered tiny bone fragments and a piece of enamel inside. The garbage disposal. Subsequent DNA testing confirmed the enamel matched Tanisha's genetic profile. Furthermore, investigators located small, charred bone fragments on the ground near the patio where the grills had been operated. At his trial in September of 2008, the prosecution presented a horrifying but logically sound reconstruction of the crime. They argued that Timothy, driven by a pathological need for control, had killed Tanisha to prevent her from moving on with her life. He had then systematically dismembered and incinerated her remains using the barbecue grills to erase all evidence of his deed. During the sentencing phase, Timothy took the stand and attempted to claim self-defense, asserting that Tanisha had attacked him with a knife and that he had blacked out during the struggle, only to wake and find her dead. He also admitted to the gruesome details of how he disposed of her remains, coldly, correcting the prosecutor that he had used a smoker rather than a traditional grill. The jury rejected this self-defense claim, recognizing the profound disparity in size, strength, and the extreme efforts taken to conceal the crime.
Timothy
Shepard was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 99 years in prison. The case highlights the devastating reality of domestic control and serves as an educational warning regarding the dangers of extreme possessiveness. It also honors the tireless efforts of the forensic scientists and investigators who refuse to let a lack of a body prevent justice from being served. Our third case study takes us to Raleigh, North Carolina, in January of 2008, exploring a web of hidden identities, proxy jealousy, and a betrayal of the sacred trust placed in a community leader. Latrice Curtis was a beautiful 21-year-old student attending North Carolina Central University. She had recently married her college sweetheart, Darren Curtis, a former National Guard soldier who was respectful, hardworking, and deeply devoted to her. To their families and friends, the newlyweds seemed exceptionally happy, embarking on their lives together in a cozy apartment while Latrice completed her degree in business administration. On the morning of January 30th, 2008, commuters traveling along Interstate 540 in Raleigh made a horrific discovery. Lying in the grass on the shoulder of the busy highway was the body of a young woman who had been stabbed repeatedly. The attack had been exceptionally violent, involving over 40 stab wounds to her face, neck, and torso. Her carotid artery and jugular vein had been severed, and her vocal cords cut, indicating an intense personal rage. Among the commuters delayed by the resulting traffic backup was Darren Curtis. As he slowly passed the crime scene, he felt a sudden, inexplicable sense of
dread.
A half-mile further down the road, he spotted a white vehicle parked on the shoulder with its hazard lights flashing. It was his wife's car. Panic-stricken, Darren returned to the crime scene, where investigators confirmed his worst fears. The deceased woman was Latrice. Initially, investigators considered Darren as a potential suspect, a routine procedure in domestic homicides. They examined him for physical signs of a struggle, but found no cuts, scratches, or bruises. A search of his vehicle and the couple's apartment revealed no physical evidence connecting him to the
crime.
Darren cooperated fully and was quickly cleared of suspicion. The autopsy of Latrice's body revealed a critical clue. A condom was discovered inside her, yet there were no physical injuries consistent with a sexual assault. This suggested she had engaged in a consensual sexual encounter shortly before her death. When investigators subpoenaed Latrice's phone records, they discovered a high volume of calls exchanged around midnight on the night of her murder with a number belonging to Stephen Randolph. Stephen was a prominent student athlete at the university, an ambitious basketball player who harbored realistic aspirations of playing in the National Basketball Association. Stephen was brought in for questioning, accompanied by his roommate and landlord, Pastor Robert Reeves. Under pressure from investigators, Stephen admitted that he and Latrice had been engaged in a passionate, secret affair. On the night of the murder, Latrice had visited his basement apartment, where they had engaged in intercourse. The condom had become trapped inside her, and despite their efforts, they could not retrieve it. Latrice left his residence around 10 in the evening, and Stephen followed shortly after to clear his head, eventually driving to the home of his primary girlfriend, Velma Newton. Stephen claimed that Latrice called him repeatedly afterward, expressing anxiety about a potential pregnancy and the implications it would have for her marriage and his athletic career. To verify Stephen's account, detectives interviewed Pastor Robert Reeves, the 43-year-old minister, known affectionately as the bishop, was a highly charismatic figure, a motivational speaker, and a respected leader in the local religious community. Reeves confirmed that Stephen rented a room in his home and that he had seen Latrice's car parked outside the house earlier that evening. He claimed to have left for a church service at 8:15 and returned at 11:30, at which point both Stephen and Latrice's vehicles were gone. However, when investigators interviewed Reeves' sister, who attended the same church, she stated she had not seen her brother at the service that night. Intrigued by this discrepancy, detectives looked closer at the pastor.
They
noticed several deep scratches and abrasions on his hands and arms. Reeves claimed he had sustained these injuries when he tripped while helping Stephen move a desk, but when questioned separately, Stephen had no memory of any such accident. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a dark, hidden aspect of the pastor's psychology. Stephen revealed that Reeves had recently begun to display a bizarre, highly intrusive interest in his personal and sexual life. The pastor had entered Stephen's room after Latrice's visits, asking highly personal questions and eventually making unsolicited sexual advances, offering to waive Stephen's rent in exchange for sexual favors. Stephen had firmly rejected these advances, but the encounter revealed a profound, secret infatuation. Furthermore, Stephen's girlfriend, Velma Newton, revealed that she and Stephen had been receiving a barrage of anonymous, threatening phone calls demanding they end their relationship. Additionally, Stephen had recently discovered that all 4 tires on his vehicle had been slashed. Phone records subsequently revealed that these blocked, threatening calls had been placed from Pastor Reeves' cellular phone. The psychological profile of Robert Reeves was now clear. He was a closeted, highly obsessive individual who had developed a dangerous, unrequited infatuation with his young roommate. He viewed any woman who engaged with Stephen not merely with disapproval, but with an intense, pathological jealousy. The breakthrough in the case came from a routine traffic report. State Trooper Isaac Cooper contacted detectives to report that at approximately 1:30 in the morning on January 30th, he had observed a disabled vehicle with its hazard lights on along Interstate 540. He ran the license plate, which registered to Pastor Robert Reeves. Across the highway, he had also noticed a white vehicle with its hazards flashing, matching the description of Latrice's car. The physical evidence sealed the case. DNA collected from the steering wheel of Latrice's abandoned car matched Pastor Reeves, while Stephen's DNA was found under Latrice's fingernails. This was consistent with their intimate contact earlier that evening. The presence of the pastor's DNA inside her vehicle, combined with his lack of a credible alibi and the scratches on his arms, left no room for doubt. Investigators concluded that on the night of the murder, Robert Reeves had observed Latrice leaving Stephen's apartment, driven by a consuming proxy jealousy. He followed her onto the highway in his own vehicle, forced or convinced her to pull over on the shoulder, and launched a savage, frenzied physical attack. He then abandoned his own vehicle when it experienced mechanical issues, leaving her body in the grass. At his trial in September of 2009, the prosecution presented this compelling narrative of obsession and betrayal. The defense attempted to argue that the DNA evidence was merely the result of a transfer from the shared household and suggested that Stephen had the greater motive to commit the crime to protect his career. However, The jury was not swayed by these arguments. Recognizing the overwhelming weight of the physical evidence and the pastor's pattern of stalking and harassment, Robert Reeves was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life. Imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought a sense of closure to Latrice's grieving family and her husband, Darren, but it also left a community grappling with the realization that a trusted spiritual leader had led a double life of manipulation and violence. When we look back upon these three tragic narratives, we are reminded of the profound importance of emotional awareness, the danger of unchecked possessiveness, and the necessity of recognizing the warning signs of control within relationships. In each instance, a life of immense potential was cut short by an individual who allowed their internal insecurities and desires to distort their humanity. By analyzing these cases through a psychological lens, we do not seek to sensationalize the tragedy, but rather to highlight the quiet, tireless dedication of the law enforcement officers, forensic scientists, and community members who work to ensure that truth prevails. It is through their efforts that justice is served, and through our understanding of these events that we can work to build a safer, more empathetic society. The human heart is a complex and often unpredictable landscape. In the realm of criminal psychology, we frequently observe how the most beautiful of human emotions, love, can be distorted by the shadows of insecurity, possessiveness, and delusion. When a healthy attachment degrades into a pathological desire for control, the consequences are often devastating. This exploration reviews three distinct investigations that occurred across the United States of America, offering a profound look into the criminal mind, the tragic cost of obsessive behaviors, and the relentless dedication of the law enforcement officers who work to bring truth to light. The tragedy of Little Elm. In the quiet community of Little Elm, Texas, the year 2003 brought together two people who seemed destined for a classic romance. Denise Swall was a 36-year-old divorced mother of two children, Whitney and Walter. Bubbly, popular, and resilient, she had moved from Kansas City, Missouri, to the Dallas suburbs seeking a fresh start after the painful dissolution of her marriage. She had built a beautiful home, secured a successful position with a local beverage distributor, and dedicated herself to providing a stable, loving environment for her family. Her path crossed with Wayne Irby, a 37-year-old veteran of the Little Elm Police Department. Wayne was a dedicated police officer who wore his passion for his community on his sleeve. Their introduction was remarkably ordinary. Wayne, patrolling his neighborhood beat, noticed Denise had left her garage door open. Concerned about local property thefts, he knocked on her door to advise her to close it, leaving his business card. It was not long before the charming officer returned to ask Denise on a dinner date. The romance blossomed rapidly. Wayne was embraced by Denise's children, and to outside observers, they resembled a happy, blended family. Yet beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect union, deep insecurities began to emerge. Denise harbored intense suspicions regarding Wayne's fidelity because of his outgoing nature and his prominence as a local officer. Wayne was a popular figure in the community. This popularity fueled a mounting jealousy within
Denise.
Confrontations became frequent, and although Wayne denied any wrongdoing, the emotional foundation of the relationship began to erode. By the spring of 2004, the couple attempted to move past their trust issues by purchasing a home together. However, cohabitation did not soothe Denise's anxieties. The arguments escalated to the point where Wayne decided to end the relationship and move into a separate rental home. When Denise unexpectedly lost her employment in November of that year, Wayne, displaying a compassionate nature, agreed to reconcile so that she and her children would not face financial instability. Sadly, this reconciliation would prove to be short-lived. On the morning of December 10th, 2004, the Little Elm Police Department convened for its daily morning briefing at 6 in the morning.
Wayne.
Irby was conspicuously absent. This was entirely uncharacteristic of Wayne, who was known for his punctuality and dedication. When phone calls went unanswered, his colleagues, including Cynthia Medrano and Chief Waylon Rhodes, grew deeply
concerned.
A welfare check was initiated at the home Wayne shared with Denise. Officers found the residence empty, with no vehicles in the driveway. Upon contacting Denise's teenage children, investigators learned that their mother had not returned home the previous evening. Her daughter, Whitney, recalled a highly unusual midnight phone call from her mother, who expressed an intense sentiment of love and instructed the children to prepare themselves for school. With 2 missing persons, the search intensified. Wayne's partner, Jerry Walker, along with Officer James Wynn, decided to inspect the rental home that Wayne had recently vacated. Upon entering the residence, they discovered Wayne's personal fanny pack and cellular phone on the kitchen counter, an immediate indication of trouble. Moving further into the house, James Wynn made a horrifying discovery. Wayne Irby was lying deceased on the floor, the victim of a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. The scene of the crime was processed by investigators from the Denton County Sheriff's Office and the Texas Rangers. The trajectory of the bullet suggested Wayne had been shot from behind, indicating he never saw his assailant coming. Given the absence of signs of a struggle, investigators began to look closely at Denise Miller. A search of Denise's primary residence revealed a disturbing handwritten letter in the master bedroom, which suggested she was contemplating ending her own life. Furthermore, Wayne's police duty belt was found hanging in a closet with an empty holster. Her vehicle was missing, and an all-points bulletin was broadcast to law enforcement across the region. As investigators dug deeper into the history of the couple, they uncovered a volatile past. In December of 2003, Denise had filed a domestic violence complaint against Wayne after discovering him with another woman.
The
Physical confrontation had left Wayne with significant facial scratches and a black eye. Although Denise later withdrew the complaint, admitting she had initiated the physical altercations, her behavioral patterns of extreme jealousy and constant phone surveillance continued to alarm those close to Wayne. Just prior to his death, Wayne had reportedly confided in a friend that he intended to leave Denise permanently. The physical evidence grew stronger when investigators discovered a second note on the kitchen island of Wayne's rental home. Written by Denise, it contained an apology for taking both of their lives, requesting that their mothers be contacted. At 4 a.m. on December 11, 2004, the night manager of a hotel in Gainesville, Texas, received a distress telephone call
from a guest.
Upon attempting to investigate, the manager and a maintenance worker had to breach the locked deadbolt of the hotel room. Inside, they discovered Denise Miller lying on the floor in a fetal position, suffering from a critical gunshot wound just above her eye. Resting beside her was a .25 caliber handgun. Denise was rushed to a nearby trauma center. Inside the hotel room, investigators found alcohol, over-the-counter sleeping pills, and Wayne's missing .40 caliber service weapon. In a display of tragic incompetence, Denise had attempted to end her life with Wayne's service weapon first, but she had loaded the ammunition backwards, causing the mechanism to jam. She then used the .25 caliber handgun. A third, longer note was discovered in her hotel room, which contained a single line asserting that she had accidentally shot Wayne and had fled in a state of panic. When Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy interviewed Denise at her hospital bedside, she claimed to have absolutely no memory of the shooting or of her own self-inflicted wound, while her brain trauma, combined with the ingestion of alcohol and medication, may have caused genuine cognitive disorientation. Many within the community wondered if this amnesia was a convenient psychological defense to avoid the reality of her actions. Following 18 months of physical rehabilitation, Denise, now blind in one eye and partially paralyzed, was deemed competent to stand trial. On July 10, 2006, the trial commenced. The defense argued that the shooting of Wayne Irby was a tragic, accidental discharge. However, the prosecution presented a crucial analysis from the state crime laboratory. Testing revealed that the trigger of the .25 caliber handgun required 4.5 to 5 pounds of pressure to fire. This scientific evidence directly negated the theory of an accidental touch. The jury deliberated for less than 1 hour before returning a verdict of guilty of first-degree murder. Rather than receiving the death penalty, Denise Miller was sentenced to 62 years in confinement. From a psychological perspective, this case illustrates how pathological jealousy can consume an individual's cognitive reasoning. Denise's deep-seated fear of abandonment mutated into a dangerous obsession where she preferred the destruction of the relationship and of Wayne himself to the reality of him leaving her. Her subsequent attempt to take her own life followed by a profound state of denial and memory loss, represents the ultimate psychological collapse of an individual who could not face the consequences of her own desperate actions. The disappearance in Houston. In March of 2007, the city of Houston, Texas, became the stage for another tragic examination of possessiveness and control. Tanisha Stewart was a brilliant 19-year-old university student who had overcome the hardships of growing up in a tough Houston neighborhood. Having lost her father at a young age, she remained dedicated to her education, earning a scholarship to Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University. In May of 2005, while working at a pizza restaurant, Tanisha met Timothy Shepard, who was 25 years old at the time. Despite the 8-year age difference, a relationship developed. Timothy actively sought to win over Tanisha's family, assisting her mother with household repairs and technical issues. However, when Tanisha moved 2 hours away to attend college, the dynamic of their relationship shifted. Tanisha began to experience a newfound independence, expanding her social circle and growing as an individual. Timothy struggled with this transition. He became increasingly possessive, frequently calling her, demanding her attention, and even traveling to the university campus to monitor her movements. During her spring break in March of 2007, Tanisha returned to Houston. Although she spent some time with Timothy, she also reconnected with other friends, including a 19-year-old student named Mark Marks. Tanisha and Mark had developed a close bond, and Tanisha had expressed an intention to end her turbulent relationship with Timothy. On Sunday, March 18, 2007, Tanisha's sister, Gayla Taylor, received a distressing call from their mother. Tanisha had failed to attend a scheduled concert and had not been heard from since Thursday. A missing persons report was filed on Monday, March 19th, and investigators immediately began searching for the young student. Timothy Shepard was brought in for questioning as one of the last people to have seen her. Timothy claimed that he had picked Tanisha up early Thursday morning, but that they had argued after she received an early morning telephone call from Mark Marks. According to Timothy, Tanisha refused to discuss the matter and walked out of his apartment later that morning, never to be seen by him again. Timothy voluntarily allowed investigators to search his apartment, where no immediate signs of a struggle or foul play were observed. Investigators then turned their attention to Mark Marks. Mark cooperated fully with law enforcement, confirming that he and Tanisha were romantically interested in each other and that she planned to leave Timothy. Mark provided a verified alibi, proving he was on South Padre Island at the time of Tanisha's disappearance, which cleared him of any suspicion. The investigation took a sinister turn when neighbors at Timothy's apartment complex reported highly unusual behavior occurring immediately after Tanisha went missing. Witnesses noted that Timothy had spent several days engaged in an intensive, continuous outdoor grilling session, utilizing 2 grills simultaneously. The smoke had become so overwhelming that neighbors contacted the fire department. When emergency responders arrived, Timothy claimed he was preparing food for a massive church gathering of up to 200 people. Firefighters observed a large quantity of meat floating in his bathtub. Furthermore, a neighbor reported seeing Timothy scrubbing his patio with a concentration of bleach so strong that the fumes burned her eyes. Convinced that Timothy was hiding a dark truth, Tanisha's family contacted community activist Quan Nellex for assistance. Quan Nell, who had been approached by Timothy's family to protect him from potential police misconduct, arranged a private meeting with Timothy in the bathroom of his apartment. During this emotionally charged conversation, Quan Nell confronted Timothy about his involvement in Tanisha's disappearance. Timothy broke down, admitting that he had flown into a jealous rage when Tanisha refused to discuss her relationship with Mark. He confessed to strangling Tanisha to death as she attempted to leave the apartment. Timothy initially claimed he had placed her body in a dumpster behind the apartment complex. Quan Nell immediately relayed this confession to investigator Sidney Miller. Unfortunately, by the time investigators arrived at the dumpster, it had been emptied. The contents had already been transferred to a massive regional landfill. Due to the astronomical cost and low probability of recovery, a physical search of the landfill was deemed impractical, a painful decision that Tanisha's family graciously supported to spare public resources. Following his arrest, Timothy invoked his right to legal counsel and refused to speak further. To secure a conviction without a body, crime scene investigators meticulously scoured his apartment. Their efforts yielded critical forensic evidence. Inside the kitchen garbage disposal, they recovered tiny bone fragments and tooth enamel, which was scientifically matched to Tanisha. Additionally, charred bone fragments were discovered near the outdoor grill. The trial of Timothy Shepard commenced on September 29, 2008. The prosecution argued that Timothy, driven by an inability to accept Tanisha's independence and her decision to move on with her life, murder her, and then undertook a horrific process to destroy her remains. To establish premeditation, the prosecution called Timothy's cousin, Nicholas Shepard, to the stand. Nicholas delivered a shocking testimony, revealing that Timothy had previously threatened that if Tanisha ever left him, he would kill her and dispose of her body by cutting her up and boiling her. During the sentencing phase, Timothy took the stand and attempted to argue that he had acted in self-defense. He claimed Tanisha had attacked him with a knife during their argument and that he had blacked out while holding her neck. He presented photographs of minor cuts on his hands from the night of his arrest. However, when pressed by the prosecution regarding his actions after her death, Timothy admitted to placing her remains in a smoker rather than a standard grill. The jury remained unmoved by his claims of self-defense. Timothy Shepard was found guilty of murder and received the maximum sentence of 99 years in prison. The psychological profile of Timothy Shepard reveals an extreme manifestation of domestic control. When Tanisha left for university and began to outgrow the confines of their relationship, Timothy's sense of ownership was threatened. The act of murder, followed by the systematic attempt to completely incinerate her remains, represents an extreme desire not only to escape detection but to completely erase the identity and independence of a victim who dared to assert her own autonomy. The collision course in Raleigh. The final case brings us to Raleigh, North Carolina, in January of 2008. Latrice Curtis was a beautiful 21-year-old business administration student at North Carolina Central University. She had been married for just 9 months to Darren Curtis, an accounting student and former National Guard soldier whom her family respected deeply. On the morning of January 30th, 2008, commuters along Interstate 540 spotted what appeared to be a body lying in the grass beside the highway. First responders arrived to discover that the young woman had been brutally stabbed over 40 times. Her carotid artery and jugular vein had been severed, and her vocal cords had been cut in an incredibly violent assault. She had clearly fought for her life, as evidenced by significant damage to her fingernails. Darren Curtis, driving to work along the same highway, noticed the backed-up traffic and the crime scene. A half-mile further down the road, he recognized his wife's white passenger car abandoned on the shoulder.
Panicked, he returned
to the scene, where investigators confirmed the devastating news of Latrice's
death.
An inspection of Latrice's vehicle revealed signs of a violent struggle inside, with a broken center console and blood on the driver's side door. Crime scene. Investigators recovered foreign deoxyribonucleic acid from the steering wheel and preserved evidence from beneath Latrice's fingernails. Darren Curtis was immediately interviewed by detectives. He explained that Latrice had called him the previous evening around 10 at night to say she was running late from her classes and was going to get some food. Darren had fallen asleep and assumed she had stayed at her family's home. His hands and arms showed no signs of physical trauma, and a search of his vehicle and apartment yielded no evidence connecting him to the crime. The autopsy of Latrice Curtis revealed a critical piece of evidence. A condom was discovered inside her body, with no physical injuries indicating sexual assault. This suggested she had engaged in recent, consensual sexual activity. A subpoena of her cellular phone records revealed a high volume of calls exchanged around midnight with a number belonging to Stephen Randolph. Stephen Randolph was a prominent student-athlete at North Carolina Central University with ambitions of playing in the National Basketball Association.
2
days after the murder, Stephen walked into the sheriff's office accompanied by his roommate, a prominent local minister named Pastor Robert Reeves. Under interrogation, Stephen admitted that he and Latrice had been engaged in a passionate, secret affair. On the night of the murder, she had visited him at his residence. During their encounter, the condom had become trapped, and they were unable to retrieve it. Latrice left his residence around 10 in the evening. Stephen claimed he subsequently visited his girlfriend, Velma Newton, and that Latrice had called him repeatedly throughout the night, expressing extreme anxiety about a potential pregnancy. Investigators interviewed Stephen's girlfriend, Velma, who confirmed that Stephen had arrived at her apartment around 10 in the evening and departed around 1 in the morning. However, Velma also revealed that both she and Stephen had been subjected to a series of anonymous, threatening phone calls, demanding they end their relationship. Additionally, Stephen's vehicle tires had been mysteriously slashed. To clarify the timeline, investigators interviewed Pastor Robert Reeves, the 43-year-old minister, known in the community as a charismatic motivational speaker, had allowed Stephen to rent a room in his home. Reeves claimed he had seen Latrice's car at his house earlier that evening, but had departed for a church service at 8:15